The Industry TV will give you a behind-the-scenes look of how our industry works.
We're going to give you an in-depth look at some of the industry's most innovative products, services, and organizations. Then we're going to take a look behind the scenes and look at the manufacturing, the development, and the concept of everything. Then we're going to head out to the field and see how everything works.
And that's not all. On this television series, you're going to get tips on hunting and producing video from top professionals in the industry. You're not going to want to miss an episode.
Welcome to the Industry TV.
In all my life, I've never met anyone more consistent and more successful at harvesting trophy whitetails than Rod White. Let's go take a look at Rod White's Land and Game.
At Land and Game, I specialize in finding you the property that meets your needs best. Not just any whitetail property is the best whitetail property for everyone. Each property has its own unique characteristics that may or may not match you as a hunter. Once I find the property that most closely matches your needs, I'm going to put together a plan that'll help you take the biggest buck of your life. Within the Advanced Habitat System, which is the system that we put across any property that someone wants us to manage over a long-term period, we utilize small rooms throughout the entire property to create as much diversity as possible. That diversity keeps bucks as busy as possible throughout the daylight hours and allow them to keep those deer on our farms rather on neighboring farms where they have a chance of getting killed before they reach full maturity. Every property has its own unique elements that must work together harmoniously in order to be effective to produce the biggest deer possible for that area. Some of the basic elements that we utilize throughout the Advanced Habitat System are specialized bedding areas, kitchens, hallways, safe areas, watering areas, and even breeding rooms. Specialized bedding areas involve several different types of areas that we create. Some are generated for general deer bedding, which in most cases involves immature deer. There are very specific areas that we create for does and fawn production, and there are areas that we create only for mature bucks. Kitchens are essentially food plots. However, those food plots are not placed in just any open areas. In many cases, we have to create them in areas where we want them at. The reasons by where we put our kitchens, or the reasons behind where we put our kitchens at, revolve around how we want our deer to behave throughout daylight hours. Hallways are a variety of environments that we use so that our deer can travel from one area to another area. In some cases, during certain times of the year, that may be from one bedding area to the next bedding area. In other cases, it may be earlier in the season where we're catching deer moving from one food source to another food source throughout the day. Those are environments that are very important to us, and that's where we do all of our actual hunting at. It takes years to build trust with an individual deer, let alone a whole herd of deer. Because of that, we construct safe areas throughout the entire farm, which are similar to a giant sanctuary, except that they're placed in key locations and are much smaller than what you would normally see on most farms. Every animal needs water to survive, and it's a very basic element that we have to have on every single Advanced Habitat System. We include streams in this category, but also small ponds that we'll build, as well as large ponds that may already be present on the property. Probably the single most important element that we have, especially come November on any of our Advanced Habitat Systems farms, are breeding rooms. Breeding rooms are very specific environments that mature whitetails attempt to take their does to on a regular basis to do their breeding throughout the season. Without understanding how these key elements work harmoniously with one another in different types of environments, there's no way that our clients will be able to kill the mature bucks that they're killing consistently year in and year out on all of our Advanced Habitat System farms. Over the past 12 to 15 years, I've been fortunate to take some of the largest whitetails in the area consistently throughout the Midwest. Now my passion lies with helping my clients do that, and that comes through selecting the right farms at landandgame.com and then implementing the advanced habitat system to customize that farm and exactly what they're looking for out of a hunting farm.
The Industry TV is brought to you by World Ventures, The Wind Pro, Gut Wrench, Matthews Bows, the Buckeye Dragonfly, Rod White's Land and Game, Herd Guard, the Extinguisher Deer Call, and Illusion Game Call Systems. In the last year alone, Rod's clients have taken over a dozen Boone and Crockett class deer on the properties that he developed for them. So let's go take a look at some of them animals and take a look at the hunts.
In this first series of hunts, we're going to talk about one of our 400-acre properties that a client bought just 2 years ago that we implemented the advanced habitat system on. The two most critical elements of this hunt was the beans itself in one of the small secluded kitchens that we had, and the water itself, which was in the form of a pond just behind us. Early season, hands down, beans are the product that you've got to have in the ground. Vance had never really been on a filmed hunt before, so to have him watch this deer come out and feed for almost 20 minutes without him being able to pull the trigger on it was a real struggle for him. It was a lot of fun for me though, and when he finally got the opportunity to go ahead to kill the deer, it was one of the most memorable hunts I've been on.
I bought this farm last year. It's 427 acres. Rod told me about it, and we come and looked at it after looking at a couple properties, and when I saw it, I knew it was the one. But anyway, Rod, he said we can make it a lot better than what it is. So anyway, Rod designed a management plan for it, a habitat plan, and put it in place. And you can have all the land in the world, but if it's not huntable, it really don't matter. But he set this thing up to where it's so huntable now, and deer's never predictable 100%, but you can increase your chances greatly. And we did that by implementing Rod's plan. He put a lot of hard work into this, and you usually get out of something what you put into it. He put a lot of hard work, and he really set this thing up right. And if you don't believe it, just look.
This was the first mature buck that Vance had ever taken off the property, and to have it be a Boone and Crockett class deer was more than exciting. But we saved the best for last. Vance had one more targeted buck this year on the farm, and it was a 202-inch deer that we had a lot of pictures from while he was still in velvet. The bedding area we had created for this specific deer was one that he occupied nearly all the time when we had a south wind. Our strategy was to go in and set up like we'd done so many other times on other hunts on mature bucks, and set up whenever the wind was going to switch from the south to the north. This makes a deer that's facing to the north, a mature deer that's facing to the north, feel very uncomfortable. Even midday, they'll get up and move to either another secure location or move around until they can lay down again somewhere where they're comfortable and they have that wind at the back and they can see out in front of them. That was exactly the case that night. We had set up where one bedding area connected into another feeding source into another bedding area, which would give us the window of opportunity we needed to shoot. The only problem is, with a wind switch like that often comes a ton of moisture. When we got the camera out in the field and it began to rain on us, we got a condensation alert that didn't allow us to actually film the hunt. But Vance got the opportunity that he wanted when the buck walked out approximately 200 yards away.
A year ago when I bought this property, I would have never dreamed what I'd be sitting here doing tonight. I'm holding my second booner of 1 week, I bought this property from landinggame.com, and Rod and his staff put together a management plan. A plan in order to structure this property mainly to hold more mature bucks, not just deer, but to hold mature bucks. Tonight we've proved it again. This is the second booner in 1 week that's been killed on this farm, and we saw a lot of other good deer, but through this system we've created edges and rooms. A lot of it, I don't understand all of it, but once again, here's the proof. It's all come together. It's made a believer out of me that the people here at landinggame.com, they know what they're doing. They know about their habitat management, and through this system, they've created a farm here that'll hold more mature bucks than I've ever seen. It's unbelievable, but I believe in this system that they put together.
The Extinguisher reproduces the full range of white-tailed deer vocalizations. You'll recreate the fawn, doe, or buck in an instant. Most calls must be taken apart to change sounds, but the Extinguisher allows you to make quick adjustments when you don't have time to waste. Bleats, bawls, groans, growls and roars, grunts, pops, and more. Quantities are limited, so get yours now.
Advanced habitat systems aren't just for big properties, but one of the differences is we can't harvest obviously as many mature deer from year to year. Here's a story of 2 bucks that were intertwined on the same 85-acre piece that I actually own myself. First thing in the morning, we had a younger buck came through that we decided to just mess around a little bit with the call, and I was demonstrating to the cameraman how you can use communication with deer to move them, even when they're at a young age, into different areas around you. Once we spun around to get in the position with the camera to film this deer, I grabbed the extinguisher and I gave it 2 contact grunts. All I was basically trying to communicate with this deer was that there was another mature buck in the area. He already knew that the younger buck was there, and what I was putting into his mind was a little bit of confusion that there might be one of those does that he's searching for being followed by other bucks. It worked brilliantly. The first time I hit it, he turned his head to acknowledge it, and the second time I hit it, he turned to walk right down the hill to us. Pig. Look at that pig. Big old Jefferson County, Iowa bruiser. Man, what a great buck. What a stud. Man. Oh, we'll go get the quad and we'll pull him out. The most exciting part about this hunt is what happens socially when a deer like that is taken out of the herd. We had heard of another deer that was hanging out on the edge of the property. It had been seen by several people that we knew was over 200 inches. Well over 200 inches. Having faith in the system from Thanksgiving Day when the pictures first started showing up until I had the availability to hunt after Christmas was one of the longest stretches of my hunting career I think I've ever had to experience. But once the opportunity was there where the wind was right and he was in the most likely bedding area that I thought that he would be in, I climbed up in the tree and had the hunt of a lifetime. Now last night obviously was one of the biggest moments of my deer career by all means. I guess kind of to tell a story real quick, because unfortunately I didn't have a camera with me, and in this late season it's tough to get a camera guy to want to sit with you in the cold, but I don't know that we could have pulled it off. This deer was one of probably the 25th or 26th deer that walked into our food plot last night, and I was all by myself, didn't have a camera with. But make a long story short, after all these other bucks and does had come in, the other night I had 19 different bucks come into this small food plot, a 4-acre food plot I've got on my place. And this guy walked right out of one of our strategic bedding areas we made for a mature deer. And earlier this year I squeezed the trigger on a 170-inch 10-pointer, which is obviously nothing to sneeze at. And I was kicking myself really hard after I checked my cameras and saw this deer, and realizing I didn't have a tag and he had to make it through another season. But having faith in the advanced habitat system we put in place on it, and knowing that deer's reaches that property's reached the fullest potential it could reach, what we consider a legacy level property. It's the first one to ever reach it, and it's a really exciting moment to hold these deer antlers in my hand and get pictures, especially with one of my best friends, Derek, here beside me, because he's put so much work into it with me. So it just goes to show you that you can grow, hold, and keep big deer on your property if it's hunted properly, and if the habitat is there like it's required for them to be there to reach this level. So we're gonna get them loaded up. Stegosaurus had 2 big drops off of one side and multiple brow tines over 12 inches. He's one of the most incredible deer that I've ever laid my eyes on, and to grow him on my own property is something so special that words can't even begin to describe. Can a small property produce world-class whitetails? Absolutely.
All you have to do is just look at how many deer Rod's taken, look at his wall of fame, and the proof's in the pudding. This guy knows how to manage land, and his habitat systems and his ability to pick out the right properties is far beyond anything I've ever seen. Up next, we have video tips from Kurt Rotter and Wild Talkers tips from Duke. You're not going to want to miss it.
When I talk about creating a scene, what I mean is taking a 10-second piece of video without moving your camera whatsoever. And what we're doing here is getting back to the basics. You want your tripod, you want a lockdown, rock-solid shot for 10 seconds. No panning, no zooming, rock solid. Think of composition. Then you can zoom, you can go in and get a tighter shot, you can get a wider shot, give me 10 more seconds. You start adding those shots up, and when you get into edit, you click them together and you can create a really nice looking film.
This Wild Talkers tip is brought to you by the Quick Change Box Call by Illusion. When it comes to communicating with animals, we tend to think of calling or talking to them. Well, there's another side of communicating, which is nonverbal communication, that I want to cover today. Let's take a look at turkeys, for instance. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to age this bird, and I'm going to give you an idea of what some of his emotional state is. Now take a look at his fan when he's all strutted out, and you'll notice that there's a nice even curvature to the outside edge of it. The other thing you're going to look at is the beard. Now the beard is a decent beard, but it's not real long. So is this an adult bird or is this a jake? Well, if you look at that fan and see the nice even fan, that definitely tells you it's an adult bird. So you can't just go by the beard. If it were a jake, it'd have some extra tail feathers sticking up in the middle, and that'd tell you an uneven fan in the middle, that it would be a first-year jake. Now, is it 2, 3, 4, 5 years old? Well, if I can get a good look at his spurs, that'll tell me a little bit more about how old he is. By looking at these spurs, I'm seeing about the shape of them, and the length is about 3/4 of an inch, so that tells me that this is a 2-year-old bird. Now, what about the emotional state of this bird? If you notice the caruncles, which are the fleshy balls at the base of his neck, if they're white and colorless, that tells me that he's relaxed and he's just kind of doing his thing and everything's good. But as soon as the color and the blood pumps to his head and everything turns a bright red, that tells me that he's really emotional and that there's a little bit more going on there. He could be agitated or he could just be fired up. So those are some tips that you can use to your advantage when it comes to decoys. And you know what? We're going to talk about that next time on Wild Talkers. Next week on the Industry TV, we're going goose hunting with a military support organization called Project New Hope.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on the Industry TV.
The Industry TV is brought to you by World Ventures, The Wind Pro, Gut Wrench, Matthews Bows, the Buckeye Dragonfly, Rod White's Land and Game, Bird Guard, the Extinguisher Deer Call, and Illusion Game Call Systems.